In the last few years, in the American debate series, we've talked politics, economy, education, international relations, or some social issues that are important both for Poland and the United States. And today, in a special edition of the program, we are meeting the US ambassador to Poland at his home in Warsaw, just a year after he took office. A dramatic year, the one that changed the face of politics, not only in the region, but also globally. Markiem Brzeziński, the American ambassador to Poland, thank you for having us here at your home.
Witamy serdecznie, Grzegorz. I'm so glad to be with you this morning and to talk about exchanges, the alumni program, fellowships. If there's a tool in terms of America's global engagement that we know works, it's exchanges and fellowships.
Yeah, well, it does. We are here on behalf of the American Alumni Association,
right.
So it's a great pleasure and we're delighted that we can have this conversation.
Thank you.
But in fact, it's been quite a difficult year, the year before that I'm talking about, for you personally, but also for the world. Just a month after you came to Poland, the war started. You didn't expect that you would have to handle the war situation across the border when you were accepting the offer, did you?
Well, no one could have anticipated that in April of 2021 when President Joe Biden called me on my cell phone when I was in Alexandria, Virginia. The phone rang. The person on the other line said, please hold for the President of the United States in the Oval Office. And there was Joe Biden, and he asked me to serve as his personal representative in Poland. And at that point, the notion that Russia would invade Ukraine, although it had done so already in 2014, the fact that it would do this, take it further, was a contingency. We didn't know that it would happen.
So
but by the time I was in ambassador school, that the State Department puts on in October of 2021, we were already sharing intelligence with our allies here on NATO's eastern flank, the Baltic states and Poland. And that intelligence would show what Russia's defensive and offensive military structures are and what Russia's political elite intended to do with it. And we were briefing our special friends, the Poles, about this in order to get organized. And by February 24th, 2022, we were organized. We had a scientific understanding of the 8 border crossings between Poland and Ukraine. We understood where every parking lot was, where every doctor's office was, where every hotel was, even where every veterinarian was, because refugees bring their pets. We were ready to stand and shoulder to shoulder with our special friends, the Poles, to try to help in this humanitarian challenge.
So you have to change the priorities or your vision of this post that you're holding at the moment because of the war. Almost totally.
Absolutely. But that's actually the nature of diplomacy and the nature of, I think, government service. You have to pivot and weave and bob as the issues and challenges morph and change, remain flexible and be ready to move when the time is right. And we were ready to move when the time is right. It's the essence of strategic planning. We were hoping for the best but prepared for the worst, and the worst happened. For me, the most difficult part of serving as U.S. ambassador to Poland in the last year has been the multiplicity, how numerous the different dimensions of the engagement are, and the different places that I would like to be and need to be as it pertains to military and security, as it pertains to humanitarian and refugee relief, as it pertains to business and commercial connectivity between America and Poland, as it pertains to democracy, rule of law, and human rights, as it pertains to the people-to-people connection. And there are so many different ways in this really broad and deep diplomatic relationship one can take it, and you can only be one place at a time. And that's been, quite frankly, one of the biggest challenges.
So out of those challenges that you have just mentioned, what would you consider the most important or the hardest?
Sure. Well, first of all, at its essence, a government's obligation to its people is to keep people safe and secure. really beyond practically anything else, a government must keep its people safe and secure. And I'm proud to say that we have thousands of U.S. soldiers here in Poland standing shoulder to shoulder with Polish soldiers spread out on military bases all across Poland, keeping Poland safe and secure. And that's why when I do interviews, I like to say, Polska jest bezpieczna I Polska jest zabezpieczona. Poland is safe and Poland is secure.
It's the most important message that you've been sending for the last months in this country. But that's true. The whole region has suddenly lost its sense of security, of course, including Poland. And I'm also talking about ordinary citizens, ordinary people in the street. They were afraid what was going to happen. And then we saw the American-Polish cooperation sort of tighten up with your president coming over, vice president coming over, other officials. So very intensive time that
yes.
was.
Well, I'm glad that you noticed a big piece of this, because one of the things U.S. Mission Poland has provided is support for a truly historic, unprecedented number of senior U.S. official visits to Poland. It has ramped up because our top leaders want to bear witness to what is happening in this part of the world. They want to bear witness to the fact that collective defense is working, and they want to bear witness to the incredible thing that the Poles are doing in terms of supporting Ukrainian refugees. And the record speaks for itself. Since February 24th, U.S. Mission Poland has hosted the President of the United States, the Vice President, the Secretary of State 3 times, Secretary of Defense 3 times, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Agriculture, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, National Security Advisor, and more than 120 members of Congress. That's over 1/5 the entire U.S. Congress. And that's never happened before.
And the gossip is, it's off the record and it's still not confirmed. Unless it is Joe Biden coming soon to Poland?
Well, I have no information to share on that. I can, of course, tell you that I would love him to come to Poland again, because I think there's something to see here. One would see resilience on the part of the Polish people, tremendous sacrifice to help the Ukrainian refugees, and tremendous solidarity between America and Poland when it comes to security.
Mr. Ambassador, how do you think it will affect, it will influence the relations between Poland and the United States in the long run, even after the war is over, which we would love to see?
Well, I think that what you are seeing in the last year is a meshing together of the American and Polish governments in a way that is unprecedented. As I described the military and security alignment right now, we now have the word permanent next to a U.S. Army facility in Poznań, Poland, the 5th Corps Forward Command Headquarters. That's never happened before. A number of these changes will clearly last well beyond the time that the crisis is over, and we hope that the crisis is over soon, but we're prepared for it to be long and drawn out.
All right, Mark Brzezinski, as you know, this conversation is all about alumni community in Poland, very active and very strong and for that. We even have a list of questions from some members. Not that we have enough time to go through all of them, but we'll just pick on a few.
Thank you.
But before we go into that particular part, you yourself have an experience as a Fulbrighter, don't you? You said recently, after 30 years since I was a Fulbrighter, it still has an impact on my life and work. I'd like to ask you, what kind of influence does it have on your life and work today, after 3 decades?
Sure. Well, just to kind of share that story, I came here on a Fulbright between 1991 and 1993 to study the Constitutional Court. In other words, that judicial institution put in place to stand up to political authorities to make sure that law is supreme to power.
Yeah, well, very up-to-date topic today.
Yes, it is, and not just in Poland, but everywhere. America has its own struggle in terms of protecting democracy, as President Biden so clearly shared when he was here in Poland last March. And I wrote a book on the Constitutional Court. But equally important, I was able to learn Poland from the street. I lived on ulica Kamka, close to University of Warsaw.
Right in the heart of Warsaw, just to mention.
Right in the heart of Warsaw. I remember the opening of the new McDonald's. I remember the students at the university.
Were you there?
I was at the opening of the new McDonald's on day one, actually. and I was impressed. And I recently took part in McDonald's 30th
the
anniversary.
iconic pictures of the opening of McDonald's still somewhere in the public domain. Yeah.
And what was so amazing was the pride and the professionalism and the efficiency and the ability to learn of the employees, the Polish employees of the first McDonald's. And that story can be proliferated millions of times in the story in Poland in the last 30 years. And that's why when visitors come to Poland, I tell them there is a story here that I can tell you personally. Because I was here 30 years ago. And that's the capacity of change of the Polish people. Because Poland 30 years ago was just coming out from behind the Iron Curtain of the former Soviet bloc. And it was still somewhat of an insular country cut off from the rest of the world. And what Poland has done in the last 30 years is through its own, Poles are very pracowity, they're very hardworking. Through their own energy, the Poles have lifted themselves up, assimilated with Western institutions. This has been a prosperous period in Polish history. The last 30 years have seen almost every year, except COVID year, with positive growth. It's a tremendous manufacturing destination for corporations from around the world, not just in America. It's a remarkable story, and I'm so pleased as ambassador now, I'm so pleased I can tell that story to visitors who come here for the first time, that what you see is amazing, that the Polish people are amazing, and there is tremendous potential in this country for national renewal. And that has, Grzegorz, only been reinforced by what I've seen in the last year.
And it would be good not to demolish it, but that's just on a personal note. But do you think that even today, with the growing tensions in the world, politically, globally, between nations, even within the nations, do you think that these exchange programs can help in a better understanding of the world and also communication between different nations?
Well, the benefit of exchanges is something I bear witness to every single day, because so many Polish officials, so many EU officials, so many American officials have done exchanges, and it allowed them to learn about another country. You know, in life you're lucky if you know another country other than your own. Exchanges allow you to do that. They allow you to learn another language. You know, as Franz Kafka, the Czech author, said, for every language you know, another life you live. That is so true, and that is what exchanges give every beneficiary. And it also teaches tolerance. The great British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli said, travel teaches tolerance. It expands one's horizons, and that's what exchanges do. And the alumni base of Poland in terms of exchanges and fellowships is rich in terms of its participation. And I work with Polish officials in government and in the private sector and in NGOs who are so much more able to solve problems and address challenges because they are a beneficiary of those exchanges. Yeah. And that's certainly the case with me.
All right. Now let's go into some questions from the alumni. And the first one would be from Sławomir Kamiński. And the question is this: what are the most dangerous threats, now we've touched on that before, to democracy in Poland and the United States? It's a fair question for you. You've written a dissertation at Oxford about
Yes, absolutely.
Constitutionalism.
Thank you, Mr. Kamiński, for that question. The most dangerous threat is not constantly tending to the practice of democracy, not just the principles of democracy, but the practice of democracy, making sure that in the collision between law and power, law remains supreme, that rules are followed, and that everyone must follow the same rules. And each of our countries has that struggle. Look at America and January 6th and what we're wrestling with there. And this country and other countries must assiduously focus on democratic practice. And sometimes in the hustle and bustle of life, when there's a collision with other priorities like security, like prosperity, sometimes it may be the easy thing to do, to subordinate legality or constitutionalism, and that is not in the benefit of our respective democracies.
If you think about it, what do you think are the sources of these threats? What's at the ground of it all?
I think there's a number of different sources. Opportunism, disinformation, misinformation, fear.
That's the big thing, disinformation. That's a big challenge.
I'm listing a number of them, actually. I think that sometimes people think that they can be more effective to go around the rules. And leaders must keep that particularly in mind, that while security is a priority, freedom, democracy, and the rule of law and human rights are too. And maintaining an eye on that North Star is really, really important. And that is something that we have been focusing really closely on at the U.S. Embassy and engaging with all officials on to make sure that everyone keeps their eye on the ball as it pertains to that.
The next question from Mr. Kamiński is how would you address these threats? But you've partly answered that question.
Well, the President Biden has pulled together a annual summit on democracy to allow countries around the world to share not necessarily what is unique about their respective democracies, but what is universal and transferable about the challenges to democracy that each of them face. And it's been a very effective catalyst in sharing lessons learned between differentially situated countries. So at a macro level, that's what the Biden administration is doing. I can tell you here in Poland, U.S. mission in Poland very much supports NGOs and nonprofits that are dedicated to
freedom of speech,
freedom of the press, human rights, rule of law. When I went through my confirmation hearing in front of the U.S. Senate to come to Poland, I basically said 3 words when asked about democracy and the rule of law in Poland. America embraces equality, and that will not be subordinated to anything else. Our troops, the U.S. soldiers here in Poland, they're not here for a particular party. They're not here for a particular leader. Our U.S. troops go abroad to defend democracy, human rights, rule of law, freedom of the press. There should be nothing lost in translation about that in terms of our troop presence anywhere in the world, including in Poland.
Are you an optimist or a pessimist regarding that situation in this country?
I'm ultimately an optimist because I believe in the democratic values and the democratic practices of the people of Poland. And the people of Poland know what kind of country they want to.
You still vividly remember the Poland from 30 years ago.
I do, but in the last year, I've gotten to the 4 corners of this country. And I've spoken to people everywhere who, while they may disagree on particular questions or particular policies, are absolutely committed to the fact that Poland will be a democracy, will have constitutionalism in the sense that law will be supreme to power and not subordinate to power. And so for that reason, I'm an optimist for Poland and Poland's democracy.
Roman Revolt is asking you, Polish democracy was built on the shoulders of civil society. Solidarność and Lech Wałęsa can be a good example of that. Currently, civil society organizations in Poland are under threat. Only the ones that are chosen by the government are supported. Would you think there is a need to support Polish civil society sector? And would the US do anything about it? That's Roman's question.
Thank you, Roman, for that question. Well, not only do we think we should do that, we do that. We support a number of different human rights, rule of law, and democracy NGOs in Poland in a number of different ways. First of all, using the power to convene, even in the U.S. Ambassador's residence, I have convened many meetings around democracy and the rule of law, bringing different human rights lawyers groups together here. And I've shared some of those gatherings on social media, and not everyone likes it. And you know what? That's fine. America embraces equality, and that's what we're going to continue to do. We also fund different human rights and democracy and rule of law groups in this country. We support conferences and gatherings of different leaders and prospective leaders, and I directly engage with the government here at the top level regarding questions pertaining to rule of law and democracy, and try to advance the alignment between the U.S. government and President Biden and Poland and the Polish government as it pertains to this.
You're also engaged in disinformation education. Let's call it this way.
That's right. And we do
because today it's a part of the war, really. This
it
information.
Is absolutely. Oh, I think Russia and Putin would love to sow chaos and disrupt Poland through misinformation and disinformation and lies. I mean, that's what the Soviets did. That's kind of what they did.
They're professional at that.
Yes, they are. They have a lot of history there. And what's great is that the Poles are tremendously resilient to lies and misinformation, but make no mistake, it won't be for lack of trying on the part of the Russians. We have supported training and brought over our best cyber experts to train with the Poles in terms of how to fight misinformation and disinformation, and have taken a number of other undertakings as it pertains to that I don't think would be appropriate.
That's probably one of the most important things, really.
Yes, exactly.
Łukasz Kurpaska, that's a bit of a different subject, but referring to your past career in Sweden as an ambassador, a Swedish ambassador, or the ambassador in Sweden, in fact, the American ambassador in Sweden, how will the Swedish membership influence NATO?
Well, thank you, Łukasz. I appreciate that question. I lived 4 years in Sweden, and I'm so happy that the Swedes are joining NATO. Collective defense has been shown to work in the face of Russian aggression. And it is terrific that Sweden will bring its capacities, it will bring its geostrategic location into the family of NATO alliance countries. That is a tremendous success on the part of the NATO alliance, because security in the Baltic and in the Northern Europe and in the Nordic areas is an American and it's a NATO priority.
Is NATO gaining now a new additional strength to this organization?
Well, every NATO-pact country brings a certain unique capacity, and Finland and Sweden will as well. I lived in Sweden for 4 years. I did a lot with the Swedes on military and security. They bring very specific capacities that will benefit the NATO alliance. But I want to be sensitive that I'm not U.S. ambassador to Sweden right now. My friend Eric Ramanathan is, who's doing a fantastic job. So you, Grzegorz, need to interview him for that.
Yeah, we need to go to Sweden.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great country.
Okay, a question from Vitek Lilienthal. Where is, and then we're going back to Ukraine and the war, where is the thin line, the thin red line at which the democratic world must stop supporting Ukraine, making sure that Ukraine is free, and at the same time not risking a worldwide escalation which may be the end of humanity?
Well, thank you, Vitek, for that question. I will salute President Biden in managing an alliance of countries that are each of which is very different from each other, and perspectives differ. And what the president has managed to cultivate is a unity of purpose and a shared definition of the threat of Russia among differentially situated countries. And it's working. NATO is secure. As the president made clear when he was in Poland last March, we will defend every square inch of NATO soil. Of course, that includes Poland. The Ukrainian people are winning. And think about this, Grzegorz. A year ago, would you have imagined that the Ukrainian people would be able to stand up against the withering attack of an organized Russian army like they're doing? There is a calm and a resolve in Ukraine that defies any expectation. They are heroes, and we will support them for as long as it takes, for the Ukrainian people to win and throw the Russians out of Ukraine.
Will this war change the security architecture and political architecture of the world?
I think it already has. I think that this is the first war in Eastern Europe that has been captured so vividly in video. And you can see the genocide, you can see the war crimes, you can see the street executions of the Russian military, in real time and vividly. There, I think, is an understanding that we must be resolved to see through the notion that big countries and strong countries cannot bully smaller and weaker countries. Otherwise, what kind of world are we going to hand to our children?
When you think about this year that has just begun, 23, do you think it's going to be any better than the previous 22?
I think 2023 will be a year in which we make the best out of a tough situation. It's not going to get easier with the Ukraine crisis. And we have to...
even worse.
Well, I think this will be a long and drawn-out crisis. Leadership requires us to give realistic expectations, and it looks like it will be a long and drawn-out crisis. Of course, we hope it stops today, but we have to prepare ourselves and to resource ourselves for a long and drawn-out conflict. But I also feel that the last year has shown that we can expect the best of humanity from the Poles and from the American-Polish special friendship. And quite frankly, that has produced real dividends for Western security and for Western life.
Let's come back to Poland specifically and your stay as an ambassador here. You said in your first interview just after the nomination that there's a recommendation from President Biden for ambassadors to go out and travel around the country.
Absolutely.
So I'm just checking, are you traveling around Poland?
I'm traveling everywhere around Poland. I've been from the Tatry Mountains to Przemyśl, to Białystok, to Gdańsk, Szczecin, Gdynia, Poznań, Wrocław.
Well, that's a tricky question. Now, which part of the country is your favorite part to travel as a tourist, for example?
Ja kocham Polską. I love all of Poland. There is no favorite part. All of Poland is my favorite part, and what I love most is engaging with the talented and wonderful people of Poland.
We saw your video, a very short video, with a group of friends where you're going to the Tatra Mountains. You're climbing up to the Rysy. But actually, did you actually get to Rysy?
We did not get to the top of Rysy, but we got almost to the top of Rysy.
Bula, I remember, the Bula just underneath.
Exactly, yeah. Have you been there?
Yeah. So
okay,
that's why we were wondering, well, did you
climb.
actually make it to the Rysy or not?
Well, I did not make it to the top of Rysy. I got it to the top of Buda.
So it's still on your list?
Well, no, I think I've done that. In the sense that I don't know if I can physically get to the top of Rysy.
It's actually quite steep.
Have you gotten to the top of Rysy?
Yeah, I did, yes. But from the Polish side, it's harder than from the other side. I'm
looking at your camera, then. We're impressed.
From the other side, I'm sure you would do it. It's not that difficult. It's just that it's a bit steep. That's it.
It is. It was steep to get to Buda. I thought that. First of all,
you can do it.
Here's what I loved about climbing close to the top of Rysy. Do you know that I must have passed 3,000 people on the way down? Because we got up really early in the morning.
Yeah.
And then we went down Rysy, and we went. There must have been 3,000 people going up the road and paths to the top of Rysy, including kids that were like 7 or 8 years old, climbing Rysy. It is incredible.
Right, I can believe it.
I love that Polish families get their kids out to nature and climbing mountains. I think that's incredible. I really respect that. And that was one of my funnest days. So no, I did not get to the top of Rysy.
So I keep my fingers crossed. You will make it. You will like it. I'm sure you will.
I'm going to try to do something else. And I would be open for ideas from people. If anyone has an idea out there in alumni world in terms of an outdoor adventure that I can reasonably do. This guy, Grzegorz, got to the top of Rysy. I didn't get to the top of Rysy. But if I can do something reasonable, like float down the Dunajec River or do some big bike trip, I'm in.
Yeah, well, we'll give you some ideas for that. Thank you very much, Markiem Brzeziński. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us for the next episodes of American Debates. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.